Hello, hello. I think that we are live on YouTube. I'm Dr. Morgan Nolte. It's great to be here with you today. We're going to get started in just a few minutes with this live training about how to get your fasting blood sugar under 100. That's what we're about today. So before we get started, go ahead, typical YouTube live stuff. I want you to put where you're from and what you're hoping to get out of today's training in the chat for me. So Kathy Wildler already asked, can I get a replay of this? We're going to have a limited time replay, but please just stay live. I always think that we get more out of it if we're here live, and the replay will not be up for very long. All right, so let me hear in the chat, where are you tuning in from? Oh my gosh, Linda, it's 5 a.m. in New Zealand. Welcome, welcome. I'm a fellow early bird. All right, someone from North Carolina is tuning in. Wonderful. Washington State. Wisconsin. I was just in Wisconsin for the first time. We had a wedding up near Madison, and it was cool. It was a 12-hour drive. I'm outside of Omaha, Nebraska. My husband farms, so we live on a small farm in a town of I don't even know if there's 100 people here. Oh, we got someone from Germany. Never been there. Hey, yes. Hi, Cheryl, Nebraska farm girl here. Cheryl's a fellow farm girl. Italy. I think Pennsylvania, Raleigh, North Carolina, Ohio. Hi, Sandra. Bay Area. I love the Bay Area. My husband and I went there in 2015. And we did we did Napa for a couple days, and then we went down to Big Sur for a couple days, and that was so cool. I love that Big Sur area. Then we did San Fran for a day. I think we walked like 20-some thousand steps in San Francisco. It was crazy. Connecticut, Texas, Austin. Great. Yeah, so someone from that Bay Area said that I think Big Sur was her favorite place. It's just nice and mild, not too hot. I think my favorite place, I'm wondering if anyone here is from Florida. So far, my favorite vacation place was Anna Maria Island in Florida, because it's easy to get to from Omaha, which is really nice, kind of a direct flight, 30-minute drive. And then it was just so quaint. It was like a 6-minute drive to get from one end to the other. And it was just the food was so good. So good. We walked up and down the beach, a ton of beach access. So I love that place. Australia, there's probably some good beaches there. Austin, Texas, Pittsburgh. All right. We're getting started in just about 1 minute. I'm excited. There's some brand new material in this training for you today. We're going to talk about some things I wish your physician were telling you about type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. And we will get into the meat of the training as well, with 3 concrete things that you can do to get your blood sugar levels under 100. All right, hi from North Carolina. So before we get started, well, actually it's noon, so we are getting started. The first thing I want you to put in the chat, if you know it, is what was your last fasting blood sugar level? So I know some people who are not in the States, their numbers might look completely different. In the States, it's usually measured in milligrams per deciliter. So go ahead and drop that in the comments, just so I know where people are in general with their blood sugars. All right, 126, 124, 101, 112. So a couple, mostly so far in the pre-diabetic range. Little bit creeping into the early type 2 diabetes. We have someone 243. That's okay. Follow what I say in this training today. I'll give some more specific recommendations if your blood sugars are up in the 200s fasting. Got some in the optimal range, couple 84s. Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And I have one other just quick announcement. My colleague, Dr. Beth Smith, is in the chat today. If you guys have questions, she is going to be manning the chat. She's also going to be manning our email address at support@𝑘𝙍𝙠.com so that I can focus on the training and she can focus on helping you wonderful people. I'm so proud of you for being here, and I'm glad that you're interested in metabolic health. This is really important. Okay, let's get started. All right, let's back up to the first slide. Well, kind of the first slide. Okay, so first things first, if you are new to this channel, I'm Dr. Morgan Nolte. By trade, I'm a geriatric physical therapist, and I saw firsthand so many, end-stage diseases that were caused by insulin resistance. So we're talking people who couldn't remember the names of their children from dementia, people who got amputations from end-stage diabetes, or they got really bad peripheral neuropathy and lost the feeling in their feet, or they had a heart attack or stroke from cardiovascular disease, or they were so overweight, so obese that they weren't able to even walk around their home comfortably, let alone go out to their family events. So I realized, if we want to really help adults age well into their 60s, 70s, 80s, like live their golden years in retirement, free of pain and disability, we need to start earlier, so we really want to start as soon as possible implementing the principles that I'm going to teach you today. So I founded Zivli. We run an online course and coaching program. Enrollment opens up in September, but just for now, we're just hosting some free trainings to provide great education for you. If you like what you hear today, tune into our Reshape Your Health podcast. And then we have surpassed 100,000 YouTube subscribers, which is such a great goal. So I hope that you find this content and everything else on our platforms helpful. So I want to hear from you in the chat. So what problems are you currently experiencing related to your blood sugar? So number one, you were told that you were pre-diabetic and recommended metformin, which you refused. Or maybe you were, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and recommended metformin or another medication that you're like, I don't want to take this. That would be number one. Number two, your doctor put you on metformin, sometimes even for years, without a discussion about how to get off the medication that you didn't want to go on in the first place. So if that's you, put 2 in the chat. The third is your doctor told you to cut out the sugar and just watch it for now. The fourth is that you have intense sugar cravings, especially after dinner and in the evenings. So if that resonates with you, and you can put all of the above, choose the numbers. It's kind of like a whack-a-mole of problems here. Number 5 is you're confused about what you should eat and shouldn't eat to help with your blood sugar levels. Okay, I'm going to take just a minute here and pause on this number 3. I had this just flash of insight a couple weeks ago that was like, what if our physicians treated cancer like they treat prediabetes? Like, what if a woman got a mammogram and there was a spot and the doctor was like, oh, we're just going to watch it for now. Just like, don't drink any alcohol, but we don't need to get a biopsy. We're not going to test it. You're fine. Just watch it for now. Like, we'd be flabbergasted. We would go get a different physician. But physicians are overlooking insulin resistance and prediabetes left and right. And we are so desensitized to the quality of healthcare, more so sick care, to the lack of preventative care within our healthcare system. And I know we have people from Italy and Australia, but I'm hearing these problems from all over the world. So I think it's so good that you are here today, being your own advocate and taking responsibility for your health and not waiting for your doctor to tell you you have a problem. So let's move on to this next page. Some more problems. So put 6, 7, 8, or 9 for me. The first is you struggle to stay on track in different situations like work, vacation, or parties. So it's kind of like you have that home environment controlled, but when you go somewhere else, that's when you lose control of your food intake. And those cues to want the carbs just kind of overtake you. Number 7 is your blood sugars improved when you lost weight, but you're struggling to keep the weight off. A lot of doctors are just like, just lose 10% of your body weight. And so people try to do that, but then they can't keep it off, and that's a problem. Number 8 is blood sugars aren't under 100, even though you're following a low carb diet. I'm really interested if any people can resonate with number 8, put 8 in there because that's interesting. Number 9, as soon as you have stressful events, you eat a little bit of junk, right? So you're pretty clean, but then you kind of let it creep back in. And then once you have just a little bit, all the cravings and the pounds that you worked so hard to lose come back quickly. All right. I'm going to take a minute to look at the chat and see where we are on these responses here. A lot of 8s, some 1s, a lot of 7s and 8s. Okay. This one's interesting. And if this is you, if you are number 8, if you're following a low carb, I think it'll be interesting to compare your current nutrition principles with what I talk about today. But then I can also at the end talk about some other tips that might help you. So I think one issue that you're experiencing high blood sugars is that you're making these common mistakes. And if you can resonate with these, put which one you can resonate with. So a lot of people, when they find out they have a blood sugar problem, they switch from white to whole grain breads and pastas because they're like, well, there's more fiber in here. But really, there's about just as much starch, which is just sugar. So whole grain is not really better for us than white. I mean, it's just like a tiny bit, but the costs outweigh the benefits for your blood sugar. Number 2, you cut out sugary drinks and pop from your diet, but don't realize how much sugar you're getting elsewhere in your diet from health foods and condiments. And I have a condiment example coming up that's just going to blow your mind. Number 3, you replace sugar with artificial sweeteners that are bad for your gut health and make lowering your blood sugar and weight harder. I'm talking about things in the Diet Coke, the Diet Pepsi, the Coke Zero. Beth can drop some specific names in the chat, but a lot of those things that we're putting into our water or the pop substitutes, they actually cause inflammation in your gut and make blood sugar regulation harder, even though they don't directly spike your blood sugar. Another one is you're using meal plans that are just too complicated to sustain. Like, I don't know about you guys. I've tried like plant-based in the past. I'm like, this is a lot of food prep. This is a lot. The next one is you're using a meal planning service that is too expensive to sustain. I think a lot of people, when they're desperate for those results, they're like, okay, I'm just going to buy my meals pre-made, but then they don't have a plan in their mind of what they're going to do when they can't pay for that anymore. A similar thing there would be semaglutide. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, where they just are desperate to get the weight off. So they take a shot of semaglutide or they do Ozempic or Wegovy, and they don't really have a plan of what they're going to do when they stop that medication. Maybe you've used a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM, or a food journal, but you're like, I don't really understand what this data means or how my choices are affecting this data. Common one is you're eating a whole foods, plant-based diet and seeing some progress, but not enough. And then the last one, you're trying to exercise, but it seems like an effort to outcome mismatch. Like you should be getting more results than what you're getting with the effort that you're putting into things. So I'm going to take a look at the chat and see kind of where we're at on those items. 3 and 4. Okay. Next time I'll label those so it's easier to respond. Okay. This is going to be shocking to you. This was shocking to me. It was extremely disappointing to me. And there are big, big problems going on with blood sugar management in aging adults. I already mentioned, like, what if we were treating cancer like we treat prediabetes, which is essentially ignoring it, gaslighting the problem, pushing it down the road, kicking the can down the road. And our advice from the American Diabetes Association is actually getting worse over time. In 2023, the American Diabetes Association Standards of Care said that essentially the standard is diabetes because an A1C, a hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month estimate of blood sugar, 6.5 is the cutoff for diabetes, okay? Well, they said that an A1C less than 7 to 7.5, and I did give the millimoles per 𝑘/mol, so for people not in the US, for older adults with chronic conditions and intact cognitive function was okay. What this shows is we are becoming desensitized to the health issues that face so many people. This is a problem. Diabetes should not be the standard. This is another example. I was reviewing one of our 𝑘/mol members, I was reviewing their blood work during office hours, and I couldn't help but notice that this normal range said, 68 to 126 milligrams per deciliter. While that pre-diabetic range is 100 to 125. So we have completely bypassed that pre-diabetic range completely. And a lot of physicians are overlooking prediabetes. In fact, this was shocking to me. Over 1 in 4 adults age 65 plus has full-blown type 2 diabetes, and then 1 in 2 have prediabetes. So that means over 3 out of every 4 adults age 65 plus has either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. This is a big problem. And this is why I hear from people like Beth, who's one of our 𝑘/mol members. And she said that her doctor had completely ignored her prediabetes since 2006. So she got her blood work back. She didn't know how to interpret her own levels. She just trusted that her doctor would tell her if there was a problem. And once she joined our program and figured out how to interpret her lab work, she went back through her records and saw that, oh my gosh, I've been pre-diabetic since 2006. And my physician just wrote excellent on the top of every single lab report and never said anything to me about it. Now she is 71, and so she's seeing awesome results. This was 2 months after a hip replacement. So I love Beth. She calls herself the other Beth, which is kind of a fun fact, since Beth is here in the chat today. All right, so with that in the background, let's talk about 3 things that you really need to know about diabetes, and then we're going to get to 3 specific nutrition things that you can start to implement immediately to lower your blood sugar. The first is diabetes is expensive. I was researching for this presentation, and I found on the GoodRx website that the average person with diabetes could spend between $3,300 and $4,600 US a year on out-of-pocket costs, including prescription medications, provider visits, over-the-counter supplies, and lost wages. I think it's important to note that this is just related to diabetes, but remember that diabetes never happens in isolation. If somebody has diabetes, they also likely have cholesterol issues or blood pressure issues that they're also taking medications for. So that doesn't include those costs. But I was curious, I thought, what if we saved and invested that money instead? You could have $55,000. So if you took, on average, $4,000 a year of out-of-pocket costs that you're not spending on diabetes and invested that every year for 10 years with a 6% return rate, you could have $55,000. So I thought that was interesting. The second thing you need to know is that type 2 diabetes and prediabetes is preventable. And it's important that you test your fasting insulin so that you really know your true risk. So fasting insulin, which is the hormone responsible for keeping your blood sugars in a healthy range, predicts type 2 diabetes by up to 20 years. So I like this domino picture because that insulin can be rising for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But your doctor's only checking fasting glucose and hemoglobin A1C. So as that insulin rises in the background, your pancreas kind of taps out at how much it can produce. Your cells become resistant to the insulin. Only then will we start to see your blood sugar levels go up. So there's a few different ways you can test your insulin. The first is ask your doctor, but I want you to expect some resistance from your doctor. Common things I hear are, well, we don't check fasting insulin, or why is that important? Or we do that just for insulin-dependent diabetics, or we just use hemoglobin A1C and that's good enough. It's not good enough. We need to raise that standard of care. The second thing that you can do is go to testing.com and just search for insulin test. And that's going to allow you to purchase one for about $30, go into a local Quest or LabCorp and get it done. And then the third is to go to our website where we have an at-home testing option. We do ship internationally, and it's $70. You prick your finger, you put it on a little paper, you send it back to the lab, and you can get your fasting insulin checked at home that way. But it is very important to understand that diabetes and prediabetes is caused by insulin resistance, which is a lifestyle disease. Diet, exercise, stress, sleep, mindset. This is what we need to be focusing on. Because if we don't, this is what I see. This is what I saw every day in geriatric physical therapy. So on the left here, these gray boxes, that's your age. So this 20 is like when you're in your 20s, you're young and healthy. In your 30s, people usually start to develop high levels of insulin, which go undetected because physicians aren't testing it. And the symptoms of that high insulin are weight gain, fatigue, sugar cravings. Sometimes people will start to develop skin tags and they swell easily. And then in the 40s and especially 50s, especially after women go through menopause, because insulin resistance increases after menopause, that's when they're going to be diagnosed with actual things like prediabetes or high blood pressure, or they might have high triglycerides. And maybe they're starting to get some chronic pain and inflammation because yes, even your joints have insulin receptors. And when the cells that line your joints become insulin resistant, they stop producing that smooth coating. And when the cells inside your joints become insulin resistant, they stop producing that synovial fluid that acts as a lubricant for your joints, and they start to produce an inflammatory substance, which hurts your joints. So osteoarthritis is linked with insulin resistance as well. And then fatty liver disease. And if they're still traveling down this yellow brick road of insulin resistance, eventually they're going to have these diseases: type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, dementia, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And again, this is why I started Zivli, was to help you backtrack down this road and get back to this healthy. We can't get young again, but we can get healthy again. This is another visual that I think is helpful, that insulin resistance is a root cause of these chronic diseases. And whether or not it manifests as certain cancers or heart disease or polycystic ovarian syndrome, that's what this PCOS is, or type 2 diabetes or erectile dysfunction in men, obesity, fatty liver disease, osteoarthritis. And this is crucial. Brain health is directly linked with insulin resistance. So if you want to prevent dementia, if you want to recognize your spouse, recognize your kids, remember things, and age independently without feeling like you're a burden on your children, then please, please, please get those insulin levels down. Be proactive. So whether or not this insulin resistance grows and manifests into certain diseases will depend on your genetics and your specific lifestyle factors. So somebody who smokes, for example, smoking is highly inflammatory. That's going to really damage your blood vessels. So they're going to be way more likely to develop heart disease than someone with high insulin levels who maybe doesn't smoke. So that's just one example. The other thing that's important to know is that diabetes is reversible. Man, I hear a lot of physicians saying, and people saying that they assume they're going to get diabetes because it runs in their family. Or that Beth, who I was talking about earlier with her doctor ignoring the prediabetes, it's just like the physicians just assume that people are going to get diabetic as they age. So I made this picture with a dog sitting on a nail to tell you this story, that one day there was, a neighbor sitting on the porch with his dog, and the dog was whining, barking. And the other neighbor was like, I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to figure out what's going on and make this dog be quiet. So he went over and he asked the owner, why is your dog whining? And the owner said, well, he's sitting on a nail. And the guy said, well, why doesn't he move? And the owner was like, it doesn't hurt bad enough. And so you may be sitting on some health nails that maybe don't hurt bad enough now, but I want to encourage you, just get off the nail. Get off whatever painful experience you're going through right now. That's what I call being inspirationally dissatisfied. You're dissatisfied enough with your health or your weight or your mobility or your energy or clothes not fitting, that you are ready to get up and take action. That's what I hope that you're really showing up with that attitude today. Because with insulin resistance causing these elevations in blood sugar, if nothing changes, things get worse. That whole saying about if nothing changes, that is BS. If nothing changes, things get worse. I showed you that yellow brick road of insulin resistance. That's what's going to happen. So what I want to know right now, what I want you to consider right now is, are you dealing with little pebbles or rocks or big boulders related to insulin resistance? So what this means is, I like to say, when God or life is trying to teach you a lesson, first you're going to get a little pebble. You're just going to get like a little wake-up call. So you might gain some weight, or you might have difficulty losing weight, or you might be having fatigue or sugar cravings, or again, skin tags or swelling easily. That's a little pebble. And if we don't pay attention to those pebbles, then life is going to throw you a rock and be like, hey, you're not paying attention. You're going to pay attention to this. And then the rocks are things like the high blood sugar, high blood pressure, triglycerides, chronic joint pain and inflammation, and fatty liver disease. And if we're still tuning that out, if we're still desensitized, or we don't want to face the reality of the situation, or we're not really ready to change our behavior, then life is going to throw a big old boulder and make you pay attention. It's going to be a stroke or a heart attack or neuropathy or an amputation or dementia or liver issues, joint replacements or surgeries, and some cancers. Because with insulin resistance, there does come a point of no return. When a cell dies, it's dead. So we really want to be proactive to prevent that inflammation and cellular death so that we preserve our function as long as possible. So think about those right there and just type in the chat if you're in that pebble stage, if you're in the rock stage, or you're in the boulder stage. I'm going to take a moment and see where we're at. Pebbles, pebble and rock. So someone said that they've been diabetic for 35 years, not sure I can repair this. I want to tell you a story. There's a lot of rocks going on right now. So I evaluated a home care patient once, and he was in his 70s. And I was reviewing his history and physical before I went in to see him. And I saw that he was wheelchair bound, but still living independently, but he'd had multiple amputations from diabetes. And I went in and I was doing his medication reconciliation, where we go over every single medication someone's on. And I realized he wasn't taking any diabetes medications. And I was like, dude, something's off here. You have a history of diabetes. You have a history of amputations from your diabetes. Where are your diabetes medications? And he was like, oh, I don't take them anymore. And then my thought was, is he a non-compliant patient? Is he non-adherent? Like, are his blood sugars out the roof? And they weren't. They were in healthy ranges. And I was like, what happened? Like, how did this happen? How were you so advanced in your diabetes that you had amputations and then reversed course? And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I don't know. Somebody's at the door. I hope they go away. So anyways, he was like, I changed my diet. I just got so fed up with myself. He became inspirationally dissatisfied. And he said, they were going to take my other foot. They were going to cut off my other foot, and then I wouldn't be able to stand to transfer at all, because he was using a walker, doing like a stand pivot transfer from wheelchair to the chair. And he was like, I knew if that happened, I couldn't live independently. So I changed my diet and I reversed my diabetes. So even if you've had it for so long, it is so possible to reverse it, but it does take a more strict approach for sure. And we can talk about that. Okay, so how do we fix it? The first thing is to stop eating things that raise blood sugar. And on there, I put this antidote pill. Someone is at the door. I live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure why someone's at the door, but I'm just going to keep ignoring them. Okay, so stop eating things that raise your blood sugar. I put this antidote pill on there because if we're actively consuming a toxic substance and taking the antidote at the same time, do you think the antidote is going to be very effective? No, it's not. So we have to reduce the toxic substances going into our body. And the issue with sugar is that the effects take a long time to see, to manifest. You don't eat a donut, you don't drink a pop and then immediately get peripheral neuropathy or immediately have to get your foot amputated. No. So what I want you to think about sugar and alcohol is it is a toxic substance to your body. Your body cannot handle it, especially if you're insulin resistant. So we have to have that mindset shift. And I really, we have to really take baby steps here, because I think equally important is evidence-based strategy, but also the psychology behind behavior change. So wherever you're at today, I want you to know that there is always a baby step that you can take in the right direction. So I'm trying to be very clear with my communication that sugar and alcohol are toxic substances, but if that's too harsh for you, okay, take a baby step and ask, where's one thing I can improve upon today? So that's what we're focusing on, is stop eating things that raise your blood sugar. We're going to give 3 concrete things to do regarding this point number 1. And then we have our full program opening for enrollment in September, where we talk about the second 2 things. How do we get control of our overeating and our emotional eating and our stress eating? Because it makes me laugh. It makes me smile when someone like gives a ketogenic diet plan and just like, peace out, good luck. I'm like, oh my gosh. If anybody has tried to follow a plan like that for any length of time, even one day, you realize eating is an emotional experience. And there are so many food cues that trigger us to want to eat. So we have to become the master of our mindset, the master of our thoughts, to really control our habits and our behavior. And then the last thing is to start doing things that lower blood sugar. So we cover all of those lifestyle aspects like sleep and stress management and optimizing physical activity to have a holistic approach to bring those sugar and insulin levels down. Most people just want me to tell them what to eat, so that's what we're doing today. Here are 3 blood sugar mistakes, and I hope that even if you've heard this information before, I want you to ask yourself, how consistently am I applying this information? Is it 70% of the time, 80%, 90%? Because with so much content online, there's blurred lines between what is content and what is entertainment. And I'm not here to entertain you. I am here to educate you. And unfortunately, you cannot get results through osmosis. I can't just say it and then you're like, oh, my blood sugar levels are so much lower now. You have to do the work. So even if you've heard this before, I want you to look at it through a fresh lens and be honest with yourself about how consistent you're being. The first mistake is eating too much sugar. If blood sugar is the problem, then reducing the sugar is the answer. But one issue with this is that there's a lot of confusion about like, well, what counts? What type of sugar should I reduce? What about sugar from fruit? Those kinds of things. We want to reduce natural and added sugars. Let's talk a little bit about macronutrients and micronutrients, because I know for some of you, this is a new topic. So micronutrients are things that we need in small quantities, like vitamins and minerals, whereas macronutrients are things that we need in large quantities. So water, protein, and I should rephrase that. I shouldn't say things we need. I should say things that we consume that have a larger caloric content. So water, protein, dietary fats, and carbohydrates. So we're going to take this framework and zoom in on the carbohydrate section. There are 3 main types of carbohydrates you need to know about, 3 main categories. Think about these as like raindrops under the carbohydrate umbrella. There are starches. So think of bread, pasta, rice, potatoes. There's sugars, obviously added sugar, but also the sugar found in fruit, the sugar found in dairy products. And then there's fibers. So the 3 types of carbohydrates. Fiber would be the stuff found in the vegetables and the fruit that is not starch or sugar. And then if we're zooming in a little bit more, I'm not getting too technical here, but I wanted to highlight the fact that starch is just sugar. So sugar, these are the 3 simple sugars: glucose, fructose, and galactose, okay? So like table sugar, the white stuff that you might put in your tea or on your cereal or in your coffee, that's 1 molecule of glucose with 1 molecule of fructose bound together, all right? or lactose, like the sugar found in dairy products, is one molecule of glucose with one molecule of galactose, okay? Now, starch is just many molecules of glucose bound together. And that is why white rice, white bread, and even the wheat stuff really, the starchy foods are going to spike your blood sugar just as much as the sugary foods. It might be a little bit slower, but there's still going to be a significant blood sugar response. Let's talk about that. So what are the different caloric effects on the glucose response? So if you've ever worn a continuous glucose monitor, you will see this on your monitor. When you eat carbohydrates, especially starches and sugars, you will notice a blood sugar, and then on this side I have insulin response, okay? If you eat protein, you probably won't see much of a blood sugar response, especially immediately. You might see kind of like a gradual response over time. If you're overeating protein, which does happen occasionally, that will make it harder to lower your blood sugars because protein does keep the blood sugar and the insulin elevated over time. And we'll talk about what an appropriate amount of protein is. Lastly, dietary fat, which has been long demonized for being higher in calories than carbohydrates and protein, okay? Dietary fat actually has the lowest blood sugar and insulin response, which is why people on a ketogenic diet see tremendous results with fat loss and blood sugar levels because they're keeping their glucose levels low. They're not spiking their glucose because their diet is mostly dietary fat and protein. So a calorie is not a calorie once it's in your body. I used to believe this myth. I kid you not, when I was in middle school or something, I had a big Hershey's chocolate bar that I got for some holiday or another. And I would eat a piece and then I would do 20 push-ups. Or I would be on the treadmill walking at the gym, this is in high school, and have like a snickerdoodles cookie. And I was like, aren't I so smart? I'm sitting here eating this cookie, walking off the calories as I go. But I was so naive. A calorie is not a calorie. A calorie is a unit of measurement. So outside of the body, a calorie is a calorie, but your body is like this magical chemistry lab. And different calories have different hormonal effects once they're inside your body. So I simplified it as much as I could on this slide. When it comes to blood sugar, calories from protein foods like meat and eggs, sometimes yogurts. Sometimes some yogurts have added sugar, so you have to be careful. Healthy fats like avocados and olives and nuts and seeds and the fat found naturally in eggs and meat. And fiber from low starch and sugar fruits and vegetables, all of those get the green light. Go ahead. If you're trying to lose weight, calories do still matter. We want to eat low insulin calories, so calories from these green food groups. But if you're overeating, that will still make weight loss more challenging and impossible, frankly. Now, this caution sign is here for whole food starches and sugars. We want to be mindful of those portion sizes. And the more insulin resistant you are, so the higher your blood sugar levels, the more insulin resistant you are, then the more stringent you're going to need to be with how many carbohydrates you consume. If you're very active, if you're an athlete, if you exercise a lot, you can tolerate more carbohydrates. And then the things that we want to avoid are added sugars, refined starches, and alcohol. For those who are not familiar with the concept of net carbohydrates, that's simply the total carbohydrates minus the fiber. So net carbs just look at the starches and the sugars in the food. So when you're looking at a food label, which I'm going to teach you how to do, look at the net carbohydrates because fiber actually slows the blood sugar and the insulin response of everything else that you eat. So I like kind of poking at Weight Watchers a little bit with their free foods list. Bananas are technically a free food, but let's look at that and be more scientific about it. These snapshots are from an app called Carb Manager. Carb Manager. And we do have free training videos for you to set up your own account and learn how to do that. What I did was I plugged in one banana, and I saw the macronutrient breakdown of one banana. And in it, you're going to see here the total carbs was 31. There's 4 grams of fiber. So 31 minus 4 is 28 grams of net carbohydrates. Those are coming from sugars and starches in the food. So essentially from glucose or fructose. And then about 121 calories. Let's compare that to an avocado. And I was looking up how many points does an avocado have on Weight Watchers, and they've changed their rules so many times I couldn't even figure it out. It depends on what plan you're on, but I couldn't keep up with it. So one avocado, or I think that this might be a half, but it's a half of an avocado, has 114 calories, only 6 grams of net carbohydrate, or excuse me, total carbs, 5 grams of fiber. So 6 minus 5 is 1 gram of net carbohydrate. Okay, 10 grams of fat. So these are pretty calorically similar, but drastically different on how they're going to impact your blood sugar. And a lot of people have followed Weight Watchers for a long time and given bad advice about how to eat. Because if you're only if you're just following other people's rules without understanding the science behind it, that's a huge mistake. So let's look at how these foods are going to impact your blood sugar. The banana is going to spike it because of all of the glucose and the fructose. The avocado is not going to have a blood sugar spike. It's mostly fat, and it has 5 grams of fiber. So that's just a very simple example of how a calorie is not a calorie. I think another issue, not just from poorly designed weight loss programs and point systems and stuff like that confusing consumers, is that messaging from our governments on what is healthy and this low-fat messaging is a problem. When I grew up in health class, I learned about this food pyramid, and to get 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta a day. 6 to 11 servings of refined carbohydrates that spiked my blood sugar. Then on top of that, it said 2 to 4 servings from the fruit group, as if all fruits are equal. I just showed you they're not. We compared a banana and an avocado, but berries like blackberries and raspberries and strawberries have a much lower blood sugar response than what are shown here: the grapes, the apple, the banana, the orange. And then the vegetable group, we have a potato lumped in with broccoli. They're not the same thing. And then on our way up, we have 2 to 3 servings of, meat, poultry, fish, beans, eggs, nuts, as if beans and nuts have the same nutritional value as eggs and meat and poultry and fish. They don't. Or 2 to 3 servings of milk, yogurt, and cheese, as if cheese and yogurt have the same nutritional value, which they don't. So understanding macronutrients levels the playing field for your nutrition, and it gives you the power to see what is in your food and not buy into marketing. The other thing is over here, they completely left out fat. So you can see they're encouraging you to get over a quarter of your food from grains, which is starches. That's going to spike your blood sugar. They differentiate not between what types of vegetables. So that could be a plate of potatoes and corn, which is going to spike your blood sugar even more. That could be bananas and apples, spike your blood sugar even more. And then a little bit of protein and some dairy. Great. They're probably going to recommend low-fat dairy. This is missing an entire macronutrient group, which means it is not evidence-based. And that is not the best way to eat to lower blood sugars. I have to dig a little deeper here because I think this is so interesting. The American Heart Association recommends that women have no more than 24 grams of added sugar a day, and men have no more than 36 per day. But in the fasting state, so when you haven't eaten for 12 hours, if you have healthy blood sugar levels, there's only about 4 grams of glucose, or 1 teaspoon, because 1 teaspoon is about 4 grams of glucose or sugar in your 5 liters of blood. So these are 5-liter water bottles, 1 teaspoon of sugar combined against all those. Not very much. But when we have a high sugar diet, like a Pepsi, for example, which has 41 grams of added sugar, you are flooding your system with sugar. spiking the blood sugar, spiking the insulin. And this is an example from my own life. I used to have this every single morning, and we need to look at the nutrition label. If you're not familiar with reading nutrition labels, please stop multitasking, come back to me. This is very important. The first thing you're going to look at is the serving size, which is right here at the top. One serving size of this coffee creamer is 1 tablespoon or 15 milliliters. Next, look at the amount of added sugars, which here is 5. And then figure out how many serving sizes you have and multiply that by the grams of added sugar. So I was having 2 tablespoons in each of my 2 cups, which equates to 20 grams of added sugar a day just in my coffee. That is not a healthy way to start my day. And then marketers are getting very savvy. They know consumers want protein. So here's what they're doing. They're putting protein in big, bold letters on the front of this package of Nature Valley granola. Again, we're going to look at the serving size, 2/3 of a cup. Measure that out. That is not very much granola. And in 2/3 of a cup, there are 15 grams of added sugar. Mind you, more added sugar than protein in this food product, but they're not putting added sugar in bold letters on the front of the packaging, are they? So we've had 20 grams of added sugar in our coffee creamer, 15 grams of added sugar in our granola that we're going to put on top of this yogurt that also has 9 grams of added sugar per container. So total, our breakfast, which many people could think is sensible or moderately healthy, has 44 grams of added sugar and only 24 grams of protein. Not a blood sugar-friendly breakfast. I like to tell people, fill your cereal bowl with eggs instead of cereal, and you're going to be much better off. So when we compare our healthy breakfast to other things like Pepsi, 41 grams, I was having more sugar in that breakfast if I'm eating that than a can of Pepsi. A Snickers bar has 20 grams of sugar, same as the Cliff bar here, which is what I used to eat in physical therapy school. Going back to the condiments conversation, I want you to actually measure out 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons. And the next time you grill some meat, maybe you grill some chicken, I want you to pour those 2 tablespoons of sugar on top of your meat, because that's exactly what you're doing when you top your meat with this type of barbecue sauce. This one is Sweet Baby Ray's. 2 tablespoons has 16 grams of sugar, okay? That's the same as in 2 tablespoons of chocolate chips. So you might as well melt the chocolate chips and put that on top of your chicken, because that's the nutritional value that you're getting. So the bottom line here for step 1, minimize all starches and sugars and watch your portions. So we recommend, if you're tracking your macronutrients, no more than 90 grams of net carbohydrates per day spread throughout each meal. So that's really important to not just have all 90 grams in one dose. That we live on a farm, right? My husband's a farmer. That's like getting 6 inches of rain in an hour. That's going to flood the system. It's going to flood the fields. It's going to cause runoff. It's not good. Versus if we get 6 inches of rain spread out over, a month, that's going to be a lot better. So spread out the carbohydrates. Now, if you're eating a really poor diet, that's the starting recommendation. But some people may have to reduce their carbohydrates even lower than that to get the results that they want, or include intermittent fasting into your plan, and we'll talk about that coming up. So again, less carbohydrates if you have severe insulin resistance. I know it seems hard, I know behavior change seems hard. I'm being very blunt with these recommendations to be clear, but I also want to be equally compassionate that we know behavior change is hard, and there's a lot that goes into it mentally. And then the other thing that I wanted to just caution you against is, if you're taking medications to lower your blood sugar or lower your blood pressure, you need to be in communication with your physician that you're changing to a lower carbohydrate diet, because they may need to titrate your medications down to prevent an adverse medication reaction, like your blood sugar going too low or your blood pressure going too low. So be proactive in that communication. have an at-home glucose and blood pressure monitor so that you kind of know the data and you can show that to your physician on, hey, my blood sugars are trending in the right direction. Can we cut my metformin in half? Can we cut my blood pressure medication in half? Because I had a client once and she was like, tried to talk to her physician about it. Physician kind of blew her off. Then she about passed out because her blood pressure was so low. Then her physician finally removed the blood pressure medication and she was all better. So we try to help you be proactive about that. The second mistake that we see people making when it comes to lowering blood sugar is under eating protein. So back to this Zivley fuel framework. This is how we teach it inside the program. We have an entire lesson dedicated to each macronutrient. So for protein, it's the most important macronutrient for a few reasons. Number one, it makes you feel full. Number two, it supports healthy muscle mass. And the more muscle mass you have, the less insulin resistant you will be. I like to describe muscle as the garage and glucose as the cars. The bigger the garage you have, the more cars can fit in without having to spill over into the parking lot or your driveway. Same goes, if you have carbohydrates, they have a safe place to go before they're shuffled off into your fat storage. So the more muscle you have, the more carbs you can eat without your blood sugar actually spiking. And again, semaglutide is very popular. We have an excellent interview coming out on the podcast, I think in July, with Dr. 𝑾𝙂 𝙈 all about semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy. I ask him all the questions that I've been getting. It's an excellent interview, so be sure to tune back into this channel or the podcast. You're going to love that one. But many people are taking semaglutide for weight loss, and what they don't realize is that's a GLP-1 agonist. It makes you feel full, but you can also get that similar effect by prioritizing more protein and healthy fats and fiber in your diet. And then you can eat the protein that you need to maintain your muscle mass while you're losing weight to not slow your metabolism down, which increases your risk of weight regain once you're off the medication. So how much protein should you eat? There's varying opinions here. I have combed through the literature. This is what I recommend based on muscle health because we want to preserve and build our muscle. We recommend 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. And we do have a slide on how to calculate that ideal body weight. We recommend about 30 to 40 grams per meal. Sometimes if your protein goal is higher than that, you may need to add another meal or bump up that dosage. But just remember, too much protein in one sitting, like if you're getting into the 60, 70, 80 grams in one meal, your body's not going to be able to use all of that protein right away. And those amino acids in the protein are going to be turned into glucose. So we need protein, but we don't really have a way to store protein in the body. So it turns to glucose and is stored as fat or glycogen or whatever the body needs at that time. So we want to moderate that protein intake. So the last thing, a simple recommendation is to estimate about 7 ounces of protein per ounce of cooked meat. So for lunch today, I had, I think, 6 ounces of turkey. And I put some pesto and cucumbers in it. It was delicious. So whatever 6 times 7 is, that's how many grams of protein I had in that meal. And then an appropriate serving size is like 5 ounces of meat, 6 ounces of meat, depending on your goals. So here's the ideal body weight calculation. For women over 5 feet tall, you're going to have 100 pounds for the first 5 feet, and then 5 pounds for every inch above 5 feet. I'm 5'8", so I have 100 pounds for my first 5 feet, and then 8 inches times 5 is 140 pounds. Now, of course, frame matters, etc., but this is mainly for your protein goal, not necessarily a weight loss goal, but an ideal body weight for me is 140 pounds. Therefore, I'm going to aim for 140 grams of protein a day. For women who are less than 5 feet, it's 100 pounds for the first 5 feet, then minus 2 pounds for every inch below 5 feet. So if you're 4'10", that's 100 for the first 5 feet, right? 100 pounds. But then we're going to subtract 2 inches times 2, so 96 pounds. As I'm talking through this, I want you to actually calculate your ideal body weight, your protein target, and put it in the comments So I know that you're getting value from this and following along from this. So please put that in the comments for me. And then for men, 106 pounds for the first 5 feet, and then 6 pounds for every inch above 5 feet. So my husband is 6'1", so that'd be 106 pounds for the first 5 feet, 6 times 13 inches, for the 6'1", above 5 feet, 184 pounds. And you guys, he's probably like 155 wet. That guy cannot put on weight to save his life because he's a farmer and he's always super active and in the grain bins, and he tries. But an ideal weight for him would be closer to 184. I'm going to pause here, and I want you guys to remember these calculations. I'm going to check the chat to be sure you're calculating that protein target. Okay, 125, 130, 115, 115, 140, 120, 125. All right, I need more people to be doing this. 95 pounds. Yep, 55 years old. 110, pretty close. I'm going to go back to that slide, 120, good job. Most people are drastically under eating protein. So that's why we really emphasize get your protein in, because it's going to help you feel full and reduce your carbohydrate cravings in the first place. Protein and water. I'm not talking about water today, but water is so incredibly important. Great job, guys. Now, if that seems, oops, I stopped my share. If that seems like too much protein, then what I recommend is doing this mini goal of at least 30 grams per meal. And we have a free food guide. We have a course I'll talk about here in a little bit that has a lot of charts with how many ounces of meat or what's a good serving size to get the 30 grams of protein per meal. So if your overall daily protein target seems intimidating to you, that's a great starting goal. One thing I wanted to highlight was the caloric effects on fullness. So fiber, protein, and fat, again, give you high satiety, stimulate that GLP-1 that people are injecting the semaglutide for. And starches and sugars actually increase your hunger. And I would argue that sweeteners, even the healthy ones like stevia and monk fruit, I believe they do increase your hunger, at least they do for me. So let's take a look at the caloric difference between 2.5 chicken breasts. And I think that this is maybe 1 cup of, I think it's just one, it could be 1.5 cups of Ben & Jerry's cookie dough ice cream. So a similar caloric equivalent, 519 versus 562 or 552, but look at the carbs. No carbs in the chicken, 93 grams of protein. This is not a suggested serving size, just an example. 14 grams of fat compared to only 9 grams of protein and 63 grams of carbs, so sugar essentially, maybe some lactose in the milk. But that is why it's so easy to overeat carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates. They light up the same center in your brain as cocaine. They drive that reward center. They drive the addiction center. They make you want more and more and more. I like to say sugar begets sugar. The more sweet stuff you have, the more sweet stuff you will want. I know it's a hard habit to break. I work at it every single day, and it is so worth your long-term health. The other question I get a lot is about plant-based protein from vegans and vegetarians. We do not recommend that lifestyle. We understand that people might have ethical or religious considerations, but from a nutritional standpoint, animal-based proteins are going to be better for reversing insulin resistance and lowering your blood sugars. Because let's take a look at, remember that recommended serving size was minimum dose 30 grams a meal, okay? 30 grams. That comes from just 4 ounces of steak, and that would be raw steak, right? Now, the calories would be about 181. Fat is 5, 34 grams of protein, no carbs. That's not going to spike your blood sugar. That's going to fuel your body, give you lots of vitamins and minerals. Compare that to the 3.5 cups of quinoa that it would take to reach just 30 grams of protein at almost 800 calories and 123 grams of net carbohydrates. So even though you may hear things like, well, quinoa is high in protein, let's compare it. Let's compare it to the animal-based protein, because all of the carbohydrates that come along with the protein in the quinoa are going to spike your blood sugar. Furthermore, many plants have anti-nutrients which block the absorption of the protein that's in the food itself. So we really do recommend that you include animal products that are responsibly sourced, responsibly raised in your lifestyle. Bottom line, then we're getting on to the third point, is to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight a day. Remember that mini goal, that stepping stone is 30 grams a meal. It's also interesting to note that grams of meat is not the same thing as grams of protein. So you could have like 100, I'm really bad with grams because I'm in the US, but you can have 150 grams steak. I don't know if that's huge or small, but not all 150 grams of that steak is protein. Maybe there's like 80 grams of protein in that steak, but there's also some fat and there's some water. So that's why it's important to use the macronutrient calculators to really see how much protein is in a certain food. Same thing goes with an egg, right? Like if you have an egg, that's going to be a certain amount of weight. Not all of that weight is grams of protein. A lot of that's going to be grams of fat as well. Again, animal protein is better because it's a complete protein with all the essential amino acids your body needs to survive and thrive, and it's lower in carbohydrates. And then excess protein will turn into glucose. So we want to be moderate about that protein consumption, especially per meal. The last mistake that I'm talking about are mini meals and long eating windows. This is a common myth that you have to eat 6 mini meals a day to keep your metabolism up, or so you don't get too hungry throughout the day. What happens every single time you eat a mini meal is your blood sugar and your insulin is secreted. So if people are snacking or grazing all day, you're never allowing that blood sugar and insulin level to fall below baseline and really kind of reduce the average, okay? So we want to structure those meals. I always recommend starting at 3 square meals a day with that minimum dose of protein. I usually recommend, 8 to 10 grams of fiber from different non-starchy fruits and vegetables, and then fill in with healthy fats like avocados, olives, olive oils, nuts and seeds, whatever your preference is there. But structure those meals so that they're big enough that you're full from one meal to the next. The other issue with these mini meals is it's very rare that you're going to get a dose of protein in that mini meal. They're not structured to be that large. And so you're constantly under eating protein. The reason that minimum dose is important is that is the amount of leucine, which is one of the essential amino acids found in animal foods. That's the minimum amount. It's about 2.5 to 3 grams. That's found in about 30 grams of animal-based protein. So if you have like 30 grams of protein, about 2.5 to 3 of those are going to be leucine. And that acts as a light switch for your muscles to stimulate muscle growth. That is why that minimum dose is important. And if you're eating mini meals, you're probably never stimulating that and you're just losing your muscle. So fasting recommendations, again, I'm assuming people here are eating more than 12 hours a day. So that's why we're starting with a 12 to 14 hour daily fast. But you're going to need to fast longer if you're very insulin resistant. And I think that's the beauty of personalized coaching is how do I do that safely? Like, what if I have a history of an eating disorder? What if that triggers me to want to overeat? Like, we address questions like this all the time inside of our membership. Just know that fasting is the fastest way to lower your blood sugar, fastest way to lower and reverse insulin resistance. But we have to do it in a way that is safe. An excellent resource is The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung and Jimmy Moore. Excellent book, talks you through the electrolyte recommendations, medication recommendations, all that stuff. So if you're going to start fasting, grab that companion book. And you will need electrolyte supplements if you're fasting longer than 16 hours. And if you're transitioning into a more ketogenic diet, again, we don't necessarily recommend keto. It depends on your health, your activity levels, your stress, your sleep, your degree of insulin resistance. But mineral deficiency is kind of common when people are losing weight. So we do recommend supplementing with some electrolytes. And again, talk with your physician before fasting if you're taking certain medications because some medications they recommend taking with food. And so that's a nice conversation to have with your physician about like, okay, well, I'm going to start some intermittent fasting. So when should I take this medication? I would highly encourage, if you're taking blood sugar or blood pressure medications, to ask your physician to give you a hold level. So for example, a lot of blood pressure medications will say hold if the top blood pressure is, less than this number, or the bottom blood pressure is less than this number. Because if your blood pressure is 110/80, you don't want to be taking a blood pressure lowering medication. If your blood sugar is already 90, you don't want to take that dose of metformin. It's especially if you're fasting, because it's going to drop that blood sugar too low. So ask your physician for the hold recommendations where you should not be taking any blood sugar or blood pressure medications. I think this story is so powerful to end on. This is Carol, and she was 60 years old, considered her a professional yo-yo dieter because she would gain weight over the holidays and then diet to lose it before summer, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. She had children, and after menopause, she noticed that this yo-yo dieting was harder to achieve. And she developed a slew of health conditions that she attributed to getting old. She had fibromyalgia pain that was getting worse, and it really knocked her out of the everyday things that she wanted to do. And overactivity during the holidays led to 2 to 3 days of bed rest just to deal with the pain. And so this is an example, a picture of her hand that really swelled up from fibro, and this was her just in bed, not able to do anything. So she transitioned to a ketogenic diet. Not necessarily, we give those low insulin recommendations. Some people will benefit from that keto approach. Other people don't have to cut their carbs as low, but she decided to, because she's like, I'm inflamed. My body is not happy with me. She was eating a whole foods, plant-based, mostly vegetarian diet. She was eating what she thought was healthy. That's the crazy part about this story. After just 3 days, she saw results. She said, I woke up and I didn't have any pain. And my next thought was, am I dead? Because she was so used to having pain. And she was like, nope, I just don't have any pain. And so a year later, the results were incredible. Her hand, this is the after picture. I'm going to go back so you can see before and after of her hand. There's before, there's after. The coloring is better. There's no swelling. And she didn't need bed rest. She could do hours of yard work. She lost 30 pounds, reduced her waist circumference, got off blood pressure meds. Her glucose and insulin are in normal ranges. Brain fog and fatigue are gone. I had such a great interview with Dr. Georgia Ede, and she focuses on central insulin resistance in the brain. Beth, at the very end of this presentation, will you please drop in that YouTube video so people can watch that interview? Her book, Change Your Diet to Change Your Mind, is excellent. It's a great ketogenic resource if you're interested in that diet. And watch it because it's super interesting. She talks about all the stuff that I'm talking about, but as it relates to brain health and brain fog and fatigue and all that stuff. Her fibromyalgia was in remission, migraines reduced, and her pain reduced, sleep quality greatly increased, no longer had neuropathy, so many great things. I won't even read them all. But she said she aged backwards and that she was able to gain the life back that she lost over a decade ago. And she emailed me this picture. This is Carol. She won a 5K race for her age division. So she's now regularly running 3 miles just for the fun of it again. So those kinds of results are possible even in your 50s, even in your 60s. We have members in their 70s. It is never too late to make a change. So I think that we can all agree that if we want to keep our blood sugar levels under 100, we have to eat in a way that does not spike our blood sugar levels. We need to eat in a way that keeps our insulin and our inflammation levels low. Because when we do that, we can prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes. We can prevent and reverse high blood pressure and reduce our risks for heart attacks and strokes and dementia. And so if that is what you want to do and you need more information, you want help, you want more specifics on the foods and the tables, and you want to learn more about macronutrients so that you can implement this low insulin and inflammation lifestyle, I highly encourage you to take our insulin resistance diet starter course, where I dive deeper into insulin resistance and how to eat to lower your blood sugar levels consistently. It's only $97. It's a 2-hour training with lifetime access. And if you order by Monday morning at 9 a.m., we're also giving you our recipe bank. This is our personal recipe bank, and we've put it out there for the world. Usually it's $27. We've included it free. Beth is going to drop a link in the chat right now so that you can go there. This is a special link just for you guys. It's not even on our website. When you click that link to purchase the starter course, we will also email you access to this recipe bank with over 80 recipes. I just added one yesterday for chocolate chia pudding. It's delicious. But you do have to make that decision to enroll in our starter course by Monday at 9 a.m. So I would love for you to do that. Again, here's some more information on what's included in the starter course. We talk about insulin resistance in more depth, like the causes of insulin resistance, more in depth on signs and symptoms, testing, levels of insulin resistance, in-depth education on macronutrients, like the different types of sugars and carbs and fibers and proteins and fats, heart healthy things like that we see in the store like canola oil, why those are not heart healthy. And then I do have some information in there too about saturated fat and cholesterol and heart disease, because a lot of people are taking statins unnecessarily, and it's important to understand why your cholesterol will go up on a low carb diet and whether or not you should be concerned about that. So there's some other things that we cover a little bit more in depth on the pros and cons of plant versus animal-based proteins, some pros and cons on whole food starches. I just glazed the surface today on starches. Some are going to be better for blood sugar than others. We also have some hacks in there on how to eat starches without causing a blood sugar spike. And then again, slide downloads with plenty of food tables, and we talk more about hydration. Now, there's a couple things I wanted to let you know coming up in our Zivli ecosystem. If you love today's training, there's a few things I want you to do. In September, we're hosting a free blood sugar boot camp. And it's essentially like today on steroids. So we have 3 free trainings on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with replays available, and then 3 rounds of live Q&A calls so that we can answer your questions about our Zivli program and lowering your blood sugar. So keep an eye on that. And then the other thing is, if you decide to join our full program, our full Zivli program in September, it's a 12-week online course where week by week we take you through the information you need to know to lower your blood sugar. And we'll actually give you a $97 coupon code that you can put towards that program enrollment, so you can get your money back on the investment now. So this is like a jump start. And if you join our full program in September, we will give you that money back. So there's nothing lost there. Those are the couple things I want you to keep on your radar: that blood sugar boot camp, and then our full Zivli enrollment. We only open enrollment a couple times per year. So September is the last time you're going to be able to join until March of 25. So definitely check it out. We are very excited for that. Okay, that is all that I had for you today. If there are a few questions, I will stay on just for a few more minutes to answer those. Yes, Linda, I'm glad that you enjoyed today's presentation. Thank you. Cool Man's going to buy that course. You need to lower your insulin resistance. Definitely. Eileen's purchasing the starter course. Great, you guys. Okay, Mandy, what course is best for people that are doing everything mentioned in the training for years but still have high fasting blood glucose? I would do our Zivli Plus one-on-one coaching program. That opens in September. And what that does is it gives you 5 one-on-one coaching calls with Beth or Lydia or Georgina, one of our Zivli coaches, to walk you through step by step how to implement this lifestyle, but more importantly for you, how to optimize it. My guess is that it's probably coming down to stress management, fasting duration, and quantity of food that you're eating. So we have some really, really good habit trackers inside of our program where we ask you to track your planned versus actual nutrition for a week. And then you meet with a coach to optimize and fine tune things. Then we ask you to do your planned versus your actual fasting window, sleep, and exercise. Planned versus actual, meet with a coach, see how you're doing. It could also be mindset related or hormonal related. So we'd want to look into a lot of things. The other thing you could be checking out is gut health. So I had a really couple like great interviews with Dr. William Davis about his book, Super Gut. If you haven't read that, I would check it out because he addresses very specifically how to heal your gut. And if you're at a plateau for years, it could be gut health. Nick asked, what is an ideal fasting insulin number less than 6? Yeah, so Teresa asked, if you are just hitting that A1C of the diabetic range, how long to bring it back down? I would say at least 3 months, right? Because a hemoglobin A1C is that average of 3-month blood sugar levels. If you're very stringent with your lifestyle, if you lower those carbohydrates significantly, and if you incorporate intermittent fasting, you will see results within 3 months. How can I get a CGM without a prescription? Good question. As far as I know, there are certain companies like Levels Health, NutriSense, and Signos where they have a physician network. So you can order directly through those companies to get a continuous glucose monitor, and they take care of the physician order. Dexcom, at least in the US, is going to be giving or like offering an over-the-counter CGM this summer, is my understanding, but it is going to be a significant cost, obviously, because they know there's such a demand for that. Yes, I do recommend a continuous glucose monitor. Beth, I know we have so many resources. You guys, this replay will be up until Monday, and I hope we have the setting turned on where people can kind of go back through the chat and see all of the resources, but we'll also put these in the description. So I'm hoping that Beth is taking notes. But I have a video about 5 things I learned from a continuous glucose monitor, and I highly recommend checking that video out because it helps you determine your optimal carbohydrate amount for you, specifically how much your blood sugar is rising after a meal. And I recommend no more than a 30 milligram per deciliter spike after a meal. So if you have, like for me, it's no more than 30 grams of net carbohydrates. Otherwise, my blood sugar is going to spike too high. And if I can walk after a meal, that's even better. Okay. So somebody said I need to lower my non-HDL cholesterol number. What do I need to do? You may not. So this is such a can of worms. I'm just going to refer you to another video that I made. LDLC versus LDLP. So many people think they need to lower their cholesterol, and really that's not a great indicator of heart disease. What matters is your particle number and the particle sizes. So before you take a statin, before you think you need to lower that cholesterol, I recommend getting an NMR lipoprofile test. That's going to give you the most accurate information on how many particles do you have that actually carry that cholesterol, and what are the size of those LDL particles. I don't have the time to explain it all today, but I do have some great resources on that. Yes, Coleman said, can insulin resistance really be reversed with diet, or are meds necessary? Put a continuous glucose monitor on, and then don't eat for 16 hours, and then see what happens to your blood sugar. You will actively see your insulin resistance getting better by lowering the blood sugar. No medications needed. So fasting combined with a low carbohydrate diet is the best way to go, but also good stress management, good sleep habits, and good physical activity habits are helpful too. Of course, yes. Eileen said, I'm in Scotland. We do have international members. We have some, I think one in Australia, India, France, South America, Canada. We have members all over the world. It's absolutely, it's totally fine. We do have live group coaching calls every single week. And if the time doesn't work out, but it probably would, I'm hoping, those group coaching calls are 1 to 2 Central Time. And so it looks like the time would work out well enough for you. But otherwise, like all of the material within the course are pre-recorded videos that you can watch at your convenience, and then you can show up for the group coaching calls. We also just started accountability pods, which are going great. So at the end of the 12 weeks, we put you together with 3 to 6 people who have gone through the program as well, so that you can create more intimate connections and relationships and get to know members on a similar path as you, because we know that community is very important. Beth, will you drop that link again for the starter course somebody asked. Again, traveler grandma, check. You may not need to lower your LDL. Yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to happen for that question. So in the description of this replay, we will be linking up some resources on cholesterol. Yes, you can watch this presentation again. There's going to be a replay available until Monday at 9 a.m. Greg, that's a great question. I would probably get off of the statin with your physician's approval. So say, hey, doc, I want to get this NMR test. I want a true baseline of where I'm at. Is it okay if I pause my statin for a certain amount of time? And if so, how long do I need to pause it before I take the test? That's how I would phrase that to them. Yes, of course. The CGM companies, um, there's several of them. Signos, Nutrisense, Levels Health. Those are 3. Personally, what I recommend, I really like the Freestyle Libre. I asked my doctor to give me a prescription, and then I ran it through the discount card at Hy-Vee, and I got them for $20 per CGM. So that's been the most affordable way that I've been able to do it, because if you go through one of those companies, that's fine, and they offer really valuable services for people that don't have a physician to order it. But it is going to be, I think, over $100 a month probably, and it's more of a subscription-based service. So, I think a couple weeks, maybe 2 to 4 weeks, is helpful to get that insight. I don't think people necessarily need like an annual one all the time, unless they're a type 2 diabetic and have to like monitor their insulin needs actively. But it's helpful. It depends on where you're at in your journey. It depends on how much data you like. But I know for my dad, that's like the only thing that will change his eating behavior. I can talk to him until I'm blue in the face and he doesn't care. But when he sees the immediate impact that sugar has on his system, that is motivating for him. So it really brings the consequences of an unhealthy lifestyle into the present moment. Okay, traveler grandma, can I still fast even if I'm underweight? That's a really good question. 12 to 14 hours would be safe. I would not go above that like above 14 hours for you. For you, it's really going to be a matter of restructuring your meals, having 3 solid meals a day. Low insulin calories still count. So if you need to gain weight, I would eat in a way suggested during this training, but bump up the calories from those healthy fats. Yeah, Diane, that is sad that your physician will not prescribe a CGM even though you've been diagnosed with prediabetes. I hope your physician's not watching this, but it might be time to explore a different avenue. I think that I'm not sure what communication you've had with your physician, but I think if it were me and I really liked my physician, I would say, hey, I want to get a handle on my blood sugars and I want to do that by a continuous glucose monitor. Can you please order me one? And if they say no, I would ask, what's your reasoning behind your no? I would just press back a little bit. What causes my shaking if I wait too long to eat, and what should I do? So there's a couple things there. I would check your blood sugar and see, is it under 55? If it's under 55, that's definitely hypoglycemia. You would want to have like a tablespoon of juice of some sort or sugar and see if your blood sugar rises. The shakiness should go away relatively quickly. The other thing is mineral deficiency. So I'm not sure if you're fasting or how, what the shaking, the context is around the shaking, but definitely some electrolyte supplementation to get the potassium, the magnesium, the sodium, the calcium, all of that might be contributing to things too. Eric said, are the links on your webpage? I mean, a lot of links are on our webpage. I'm not sure which links you're talking about, but a lot of the resources that I'm mentioning today, we're going to put in the description below this replay on YouTube. And the specific link to purchase the starter course and get the recipe bank included for free, we're going to put that in the first comment, and Beth can drop that in the chat again. So Tammy said, I have the Freestyle Libre 2, but it reads higher than the fingerstick monitor. Is this a concern? So what I would do there is calibrate it. I've had issues with especially Dexcom for whatever, And if you go to the calibration settings and you prick your finger, and then right after you enter that into your CGM app, and I think you do that 3 times, kind of like back to back, that's going to help recalibrate it. And I do talk about that in the 5 things I learned from wearing a CGM about the importance of calibration. And you will have some discrepancies. I talk about in that video, I'm like, how accurate is this thing? Because I was getting different readings from my finger prick for a while too. And so there is definitely a margin of error. That's why I think CGMs are most beneficial for assessing that post-meal glucose response. Because I think that the total response is accurate. Like if it says you're at 90, you could be at 90, or you could be at 80, or you could be at 100. But if you go up 30 milligrams per deciliter after you eat, I think that is accurate. That degree of change, I believe, is accurate. But where you're starting at, I'm not sure is quite accurate. All right. I think that I got to most of the questions. I'm so glad that you guys found this helpful. Definitely check out that starter course. The free recipe bank is great. It's a web page. So if you do that recipe bank, just save it to your browser window so that you can access it at any time. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can email us at support@𝑘𝙬𝙇.com. So support. Okay, Scott said my mother has glucose numbers between 130 to 60. Yes, that is insulin resistance. So if your glucose levels fasting are over 100, I definitely insulin resistant. I rolled my eyes a little bit because a lot of people like to check them first thing in the morning. And that's actually when you're going to have higher blood sugars, even when you're fasting. It's called the cortisol response or the awakening response. In the morning, your cortisol levels go up. And when your cortisol goes up, your blood sugar just go up. So if you're going to get a true fasting, I would wait till after you've been up for a few hours and then check it. But my guess is if they're in 130 to 160 range, absolutely she's insulin resistant. Okay, I'm going to sign off. You guys can rewatch this if you'd like. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and attention and just your intention to lower your blood sugar levels. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.